2023 was a massive year for video games. We got entries in established franchises such as Diablo, Final Fantasy, Legend of Zelda, and we even got 2 entries in the Mario franchise within a month of each other. We got unique smaller games such as Dave the Diver, Dredge, and Cocoon, and we got other great games such as Lies of P, Baldurs Gate 3, and the first Harry Potter game we've seen in a long time. Now that's just a small example of what we got, and that all happened in 1 year. We got a lot of great games, but in today's video guys, I am going through the highest rated games of 2023. I'll be taking the Metacritic score for each game, but I'll only be taking games with 15 critic reviews or higher. Anything smaller than that, and it can become a little unfair. Now we do have a bit of games to get through, so sit down, relax, get a drink, and let's go. Now first off, I'm starting at the score of 87. We have 5 games that scored an 87 in 2023. The first game that scored an 87 is Sea of Stars. Sea of Stars is the second game by indie studio, Sabotage Studio, that released back in August. It's inspired by the great JRPGs of the golden era, such as Chrono Trigger and the Super Mario RPG. Sea of Stars has an amazing art style, a great story centered on 2 heroes, puzzle solving, turn-based combat, but modernized for today's gaming audience. It also won Best Indie at the Game Awards, but they didn't get a chance to speak. That sucks. But still, I'm glad they're getting some recognition as one of the highest rated games of this year. It is a little smaller than you'd expect compared to other RPGs of this style, but it's still a decent sized game. It's also available on Game Pass and PS Plus, and is the first game to be released on both services at the same time, and also a great game for your Steam Deck. If you're looking for an RPG that throws back to the golden age of JRPGs, you can't go wrong with Sea of Stars. The next game that scored an 87 is Hi-Fi Rush. This game was shadow dropped at the start of the year, back in February, during an Xbox presentation. It is the next game from Tango Gameworks. Hi-Fi Rush is a rhythm-based action game where the whole game is synced to music, from the platforming to the fighting. You control Chai as he takes on a greedy corporation. But would you have guessed what Tango Gameworks' previous games are? They worked on Ghostwire Tokyo and The Evil Within, a massive departure from what they're working on with Hi-Fi Rush. But this massive gear shift seems to have paid off, as Hi-Fi Rush has been nominated for a number of game awards and won Best Audio Design, which is fitting for a game designed around music. I've heard it quite a bit before, but I think it sums it up well. Hi-Fi Rush is like a Saturday morning cartoon. It's a breath of fresh air, a new IP, and just a good, bright, fun game to play. It's also quite short, clocking in at about 8 to 10 hours. Hi-Fi Rush was also day 1 on Game Pass, so you have no excuse not to try it out over the holidays. Speaking of rhythm, we have our next game that scored an 87. We have Theatre Rhythm Final Bar Line, a rhythm game based on Final Fantasy music, but also includes music from other Square Enix games. You're playing along to songs from the Final Fantasy franchise, while also participating in turn-based Final Fantasy style battles. It's a different mix, but it's worked here. It's definitely a unique game, so if you're not a music person or a fan of the Final Fantasy franchise, you may want to give this one a skip. Theatre Rhythm Final Bar Line came out in February on PlayStation 4 and Switch. Speaking of Final Fantasy, man, we're nailing the segues today. We have Final Fantasy 16, the next mainline entry in the Final Fantasy series, exclusive to PlayStation 5, releasing in June. You control Clive and follow his journey throughout the world of Valisthea. Final Fantasy 16 is a much more darker, more adult Final Fantasy that deals with grimmer subjects, political themes, and corruption. It's also, some people might say, more controversial, due to it being the first Final Fantasy being fully action-based with real-time combat instead of the usual turn-based. Final Fantasy 16 was nominated for Best RPG at the Game Awards and also won Best Music. It is definitely a different Final Fantasy, but what it does very well, with Final Fantasy 16 providing some of the best spectacles I have seen in 2023. Now the last game to score an 87 in 2023 is Pikmin 4. Released in July on Nintendo Switch, the last Pikmin game released all the way back in 2013. You control Pikmin to solve puzzles and fight enemies, with each colour of Pikmin being able to do various things. Pikmin 4 was nominated for Best Family Game and won Best Strategy or Simulation at the Game Awards. It did feel like Pikmin 4 didn't make much of a splash, considering it's been 10 years since we got the last Pikmin entry, but that's just what happens when a year is this stacked. It's cute, it's fun, a good family game. You can't go wrong with another solid Nintendo title. Next up at the score of 88, we have 5 more games. We have 3 mainline games and 2 DLC entries. Our first DLC entry is Dead Cells Return to Castlevania. This is the 4th paid DLC expansion for Dead Cells. Dead Cells is a roguelike Metroidvania released back in 2018 and is now on all major platforms. It did very well back in 2018, winning Best Action Game at the Game Awards. It's been supported well over the years, with a large amount of DLC. Dead Cells Return to Castlevania is Castlevania themed, including enemies, new areas, weapons, and bosses, all based on the Castlevania franchise. It's awesome to see a modern Metroidvania to have DLC based on a series that helped pioneer that whole genre. The next DLC title is Resident Evil 4 Separate Ways DLC. In the DLC, you control Ada Wong and see the story from her perspective. Like the base game, it's also survival horror. It's perfect for people who want to revisit the world of Resident Evil 4 and see its characters again in a different light. Although Ada is much more actiony and badass, not to say that Leon isn't, but Ada doesn't seem to put herself in much terrible situations, so expect more action than survival horror. Separate Ways DLC released in September and is available on all platforms where you can get Resident Evil 4. Moving on to the next 3 games, we have Talos Principle 2, a puzzle adventure game released in November on all major platforms except the Switch. Talos Principle 2 carries on the same puzzle adventure, bringing back mechanics while also introducing a bunch of new ones. Talos Principle 2 was also praised for its story and exploration of philosophy themes. The original Talos Principle 1 also scored an 88 on Metacritic when that game first released. It's setting a very high bar for puzzle games. If you're looking for a puzzle game to play over the holidays, then Talos Principle 2 might be what you're looking for. Our 4th game to achieve an 88 in 2023 is Cocoon. Cocoon is an isometric puzzle adventure game and is the first game from indie studio Geometric Interactive, who was founded by 2 members of the indie studio Play Dead, who made Limbo and Inside. Cocoon is a lot brighter than these previous games. You control an insect-like creature as you navigate through worlds. It has a unique approach to world navigation and how the game flows. Cocoon was nominated for Best Indie and won Best Debut Indie at the Game Awards 2023. I do believe maybe someone else could have won Best Debut Indie, as the founders of the studio are doing a second run and definitely know what they are doing. But despite that, Cocoon is a great indie to check out. Cocoon released in September on all major platforms. It's also very short, and you could even complete it in one sitting, clocking around 5 to 6 hours. It's also on Game Pass, so no excuses there. The final game to score an 88 in 2023, Alan Wake 2. This is a survival horror game, and the next game from Remedy. Now Remedy are known for their very unique games and style. Alan Wake 2 is no exception to that. You control the title character, Alan Wake, and continue on his story, but also control Saga Anderson. I won't go more into the story than that, because it's just a well done experience that you need to see for yourself. The whole game is just a well put together game that I believe everyone should experience, especially that one sequence. If you know, you know. If you don't, then Alan Wake 2 is available on PS5 and the Xboxes, and also the Epic Games Store. By the way, if you do happen to purchase Alan Wake 2 on the Epic Games Store, be sure to use the creator code JDogSupreme to go towards your boy. Anyway, I do recommend everyone to try Alan Wake 2. You can tell I loved it, and everyone else seems to agree, with Alan Wake 2 being nominated for 8 awards at the Game Awards 2023, winning 3 of these awards: Best Game Direction, Best Narrative, and Best Art Direction. Alan Wake 2, if I haven't already said, which I don't think I have, you should go play it. Anyway, on to the next games. We have 2 games that scored an 89 in 2023. First up, we have Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty, DLC to Cyberpunk 2077, released in September. Phantom Liberty coincides with the 2.0 update. CD Projekt Red worked hard to bring Cyberpunk back, and they go in full force with Phantom Liberty. Set in a new district, this area is more compact, with its own unique quests and characters, including Solomon Reed, played by Idris Elba. Phantom Liberty was nominated for Best Narrative, Best Performance, and won Best Ongoing Game. The DLC is only available on next-gen platforms, which is maybe what they should have done with the original base game. If you haven't experienced the world of Cyberpunk, now is no better time. The other game that scored an 89 is Dead Space Remake. It's been a great year for horrors and remakes. A remake of the original Dead Space, released back in 2008, released in January on all next-gen platforms. The Dead Space remake was developed by Motive Studio, a survival horror set on a spaceship where you're fighting various monsters known as Terramorphs. the remake has added things for better or worse, modernizing certain aspects while keeping some things the same, such as the main character Isaac now has a voice in the remake. Dead Space Remake was nominated for Best Audio Design, and is a good choice if you haven't played the original Dead Space. Next up, at the score of 90, we have 3 games. The first game is Dave the Diver. This game is a mix of genres. It's a restaurant simulator, it's a fishing game, it's got some RPG elements, it's got some adventure. It's just a big mix of genres that sound a bit weird, but it all fits together nicely. Developed by Mint Rocket, Dave the Diver released on Steam and macOS in June, with a Switch version following in October. Dave the Diver was nominated for Best Indie Game at the Game Awards 2023, but it's not exactly an independent game, with even the developer saying they aren't indie. Despite the indie yes-no drama, it's still a great well-made game, perfect for the Steam Deck or Switch. Dave the Diver is a great casual game to play over the holidays. The next game that scored a 90 in 2023 is Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Insomniac is continuing with the Spider-Man franchise with Spider-Man 2, a PS5 exclusive, releasing in October. Spider-Man 2 continues on the story of Peter Parker and Miles Morales, who was introduced in the spin-off game. It builds off the previous Spider-Man games, allowing for multiple playstyles due to the 2 characters. Spider-Man 2 has darker tones in the story and was nominated for 8 Game Awards, including Game of the Year, Best Game Direction, and Best Narrative, but sadly won none of these. Some people might say that Spider-Man 2 was snubbed, but when a year is this stacked, there's going to be some games that just don't win. Despite this, Spider-Man 2 is one of the best games of this year. The final game to score a 90 in 2023 is Slay the Princess, a very unique game. Slay the Princess is a horror adventure novel released in October on Steam, Mac, and Linux. Slay the Princess is developed by Black Tabby Games. Now these games are quite a specific niche, but it's done so well, it's made its way into the mainstream. As the title may suggest, you are trying to slay the princess, praised for its narrative, art, music, and voice performances. Despite the game's high praise, it was not mentioned at the Game Awards 2023 at all. If you're looking for something very different, then give Slay the Princess a go. Now jumping up to the score of 92, we have 2 games that achieved this in 2023. First up, we have Super Mario Bros. Wonder, the first traditional 2D Mario since New Super Mario Bros. U back in 2012. Nintendo knocked it out of the park. It's Nintendo, it's Super Mario. You know what you're gonna get, a well-made game. And even after over 30 years, Nintendo is still keeping the Super Mario franchise fresh, and Super Mario Bros. Wonder is no exception. In each level, there is a thing called a Wonder Seed that just flips the game upside down. You don't know what it's gonna do, but it changes the level dramatically. From Elephant Mario to moving the end level flag, there's so many ideas here that some ideas could be whole separate games. Super Mario Bros. Wonder was nominated for 5 different Game Awards, including Game of the Year, but only one, Best Family Game. Once again, another fantastic game from Nintendo. The other game to score a 92 in 2023 is Street Fighter 6. The next entry in the Street Fighter series, developed by Capcom, released on all major platforms except the Switch in June. Now I'm not a Street Fighter guy, I'm not going to pretend to know what I'm talking about, but the general fighting game community are calling this a big return to form for the Street Fighter series. Street Fighter 6 was nominated for 3 Game Awards and won Best Fighting Game. Street Fighter 6 stands at the top tier of fighting games. Now speaking of Capcom, the next game at a score of 93, the Resident Evil 4 Remake. Releasing in March on all major platforms except Switch. Capcom has been going through all its previous titles and giving the remake treatment, and Resident Evil 4 is next on the list, a remake of the original that released back in 2005. The original is considered one of the best video games of all time. You control Leon as he is trying to save the president's daughter from a screwed up cult. The remake has an updated plot, new visuals, characters, cast, and altered gameplay. If you never played the original Resident Evil 4, the remake is a perfect way to play. Nominated for 3 different awards, including Game of the Year, Best Action Adventure, and Audio Design. 2023 was definitely stacked with amazing games, but it's also stacked with great remakes, with another one coming at a score of 94 is Metroid Prime Remastered. shadow dropping the same day as a Nintendo Direct back in February on the Switch. This is a remaster of the game that released all the way back in 2002. Metroid Prime is also another game that is considered one of the greatest of all time, an action-adventure where you control the bounty hunter Samus as she battles the space pirates and their biological experiments. The remaster includes updated graphics, controls, and new art. The remaster stays very faithful to the original while modernizing for today's audience. Now today's gaming audiences can experience one of the greatest games of all time. And finally, we have come to the score of 96. Two games got this very high score in 2023. First up, we have The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. Released in May on the Switch, this is the next entry in the Legend of Zelda series and considered the sequel to Breath of the Wild. Take Breath of the Wild, but put the game on steroids. It retains many of the game's mechanics and features, but expands on things such as vertical exploration and crafting. You control Link as he searches for Princess Zelda while combating the Demon King. When the game released, it even caused developers all over social media to point out that what is happening in Tears of the Kingdom is a technical marvel. Also, this massive behemoth of a game runs on the Switch. Although it definitely does have the odd performance issues, it's a wonder that this game even runs in the first place. Many people are saying that Tears of the Kingdom was the swan song for the Switch, and what a great way to go out. Nominated for 6 different awards, including Game of the Year, Best Score in Music, and 1 Best Action Adventure. If you're looking for a big adventure over the holidays, look no further than Tears of the Kingdom. And finally, the last game on our list, scoring a 96, Baldurs Gate 3, released in August on Steam with PlayStation and Xbox following in later months. Baldurs Gate 3 took the gaming world by storm, a CRPG based off Dungeons & Dragons where you control a party of heroes brought together by an unfortunate event. This game was a smash hit, being one of the most played games on Steam and is still hitting high numbers at the time of recording. And also cleaning up at the Game Awards, nominated for 9 awards and winning 6 of them, including Game of the Year, Best Performance, and Best RPG. Baldurs Gate 3 is truly groundbreaking in many forms. Its open approach to combat, multiple branching decisions throughout the entire game, and its performance of characters. All this combine into one amazing experience, and is the highest rated game of 2023. And that was the highest rated games of 2023. Let me know what you think, and what is your favorite game down in the comments below. 2023 was a massive year for video games, and I wonder if 2024 can deliver on that same level. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed, and consider subscribing. In the future, I may even look at the worst rated games of 2023, and look ahead to what is coming in 2024. Thanks guys, you've been watching J-Dog Supreme.